Alright, so just a little breakdown on the build that I've been using to practice the Corrupted Puppeteer and Vesper's Host. I've mainly been using Spirit of the Foe Tracer in this dungeon on my Hunter. And of course, what better to pair Foe Tracer with than Star Eaters if you're talking about maximizing your potential damage to bosses, right? So I've been hunting for this class item for the past couple weeks, just doing dual destiny, attuning either Spirit of the Foe Tracer or Spirit of the Star Eaters, farming the Pale Heart, doing my Pathfinders, haven't had any luck, and then I just got it today. So that's what you're looking at right here. Still haven't put a cipher on here, so my stats aren't as good as they could be. But prior to this, I was using Spirit of the Foe Tracer and Search Arachne, which was really helping me survive the boss arena, because I'm still not, I'm definitely nowhere close to 100% on surviving the boss arena, reading the attacks and all that kind of stuff. But I've been getting better at it. I've been doing a lot of, I've been running the dungeon on all 3 classes every week, and then sometimes, just practicing the final checkpoint over and over, mainly in a fire team. But this is with the goal in mind that I can go in and do the solo flawless. It's just figuring out how to read the boss arena to stay alive, right? On all 3 classes. I'd say I'm most efficient on my Titan, but I'm a Titan main, so I've been trying to put a little bit more practice in on my Hunter, right? So I just completed a damage phase, well, actually the entire final boss phase, flawless for myself. I was in a fire team, of course, but I didn't die. We had one completely new LFG blueberry in there, and myself and one other person that had done it before, right? But yeah, so I had to switch from Foe Tracer, or from Search Arachne to Star Eaters, which presented an issue where I didn't have as much damage resistance as I was used to, right? Because previous, like, I didn't have Star Eaters, right? So every time I was throwing my grenades, which is often because you have your Dusk Field grenades on a pretty quick uptime, and then you've got your what do you call your Hailfire spikes, right? Every time you throw a Hailfire spike while you're Transcendent, you reproc Woven Mail for 10 seconds, right? So the Woven Mail that you get from Search Arachne on Prismatic is very good. It's better than any other way of getting Woven Mail other than Abeyant Leaps on Titan. Not Spirit of the Abeyant, just regular exotic Abeyant Leaps. When you suspend enemies, you get Woven Mail right on Titan. That's the only alternative on Prismatic subclasses to get Woven Mail, is through Spirit of Search Arachne, right? Of course, you can use a Strand Super, and then you can use Facet of Purpose, right? But then you only get 5 seconds of Woven Mail, which is, it's half the time. So it really doesn't feel good to pick up an orb and only have it for 5 seconds, and then you're also having to waste, you're not going to use Silk Strike. I mean, forget it, unless, maybe in certain bosses, but definitely not for the Puppeteer, nor for Raneiks, so it's just not really applicable, right? So if you do have Search Arachne, I definitely recommend it for survivability, because then you can, in the boss arena, you can have Frost Armor mixed with arc damage resistance from Risk Runner mixed with Woven Mail, right? And it basically makes it so that you're like, I don't know, you probably have like 80 to 90% damage resistance, so it's pretty hard to die unless you're standing directly in the pulse, like right when the lightning strikes, right? That's the only thing that'll basically one-shot you, right? So you have an insane amount of DR. So even without Search Arachne, I mean, you still have Risk Runner, you still have Frost Armor, right? Because I am using a Facet of Purpose. Yeah, so anyways, I was excited to give this a try, and I just did my first run, like I said, managing to stay alive. So I'll talk about, I'll do a little bit of commentary over the 2 damage phases. I won't bore you with all of the mechanics leading up to damage phase. I'll probably just showcase the 2 damage phases. But yeah, so the build that I'm using here, well, as far as weapons go, right, I'm using Lost Signal and Chill Inhibitor, right? So I still don't have the God Roll, Envious Arsenal with Bait and Switch, or Cascade Point with Bait and Switch. just haven't dropped for me personally. I know some people in the community are saying that Bungie is like weighting perks against the god rolls so that nobody in the community is getting these combos, but apparently some people do have them, so I don't know how much credence there is to that. Anyways, I've got this Rhyme Stealer bait and switch, so I figured I'll just use this for now, even though my OCD is like, oh, I can't use a weapon that's not like, doesn't have a gold border or enhanced perks, but I'm not going to waste my resources on this thing until until I get the god roll that I actually want. But come to find out, this is actually kind of a perfect roll for this build specifically, right? Because I'm using all stasis. This is basically a Revenant stasis hunter build. It's just on prismatic. Okay, so I'm using Silence and Squall. I'm using Withering Blade, Dustfield Grenades, and then my Hailfire Spike with Winter Shroud, right? Facet of Ruin to increase shatter damage, and then Facet of Purpose to pick up orbs for Frost Armor, and then Facet of Awakening so that I get Stasis Shards, right? And Ionic Traces from Risk Runner. But yeah, so that's a whole lot of stasis. On top of that, I got Stylish Executioner to go in Viz when I do kill slowed targets, or even I think Risk Runner. No, I think it's just slowed targets that are making me invis. But yeah, anyway, so pretty much no matter what I do with my ability kit, I will give myself a or a stasis weapon boost ×4, right? So I don't need the surge mods on my legs. It's just I get literally 4 copies of surge legs on my legs, 4 surge mods. Just intrinsically from Foe Tracer. So anytime you hit a boss tier target with a ability, you will get a matching elemental buff, right? 25%. So it's equivalent to Radiant, right? You can't stack that much damage on your legs just with armor charge anyway. So this is really good. And the reason it's so good on stasis is because, for example, we have damage over time, right? So your Duskfield Grenade is doing tick damage, okay? And so here's the one caveat with Foe Tracer that I've come to realize after experimenting with it for quite some time is you can't re-proc the timer. So if you hit an enemy with your ability, you've got your ×4 boost for 10 seconds. If you land another ability while the timer is up, it is not going to refresh the timer, right? So then when the timer expires, like a second or 2 later, then you don't have your ability, and then you're out of that 25% damage buff completely, right? So normally, depending on your abilities, you have to time your abilities perfectly so that you can keep good uptime on your ×4. Now, but like I'm saying, with stasis, for example, with Duskfield Grenades, with Silence and Squall, with having 2 Withering Blades as opposed to 1, the damage over time from Duskfields, actually, you can land the Duskfield while your Foe Tracer buff is up, and then when it expires, the tick damage will still be doing damage, and it'll reproc it instantly, automatically. Right, same for Silence and Squall. I think the super lasts like 15 seconds or so. So yeah, it's just always going to reproc. And then on top of that, you pop Transcendence. Your Hailfire Spike is also doing the exact same thing, right? It's doing damage over time. And I've tested this with Solar as well and with Stasis just to see how it interacted with Foe Tracer. And so far, my finding is that it will not proc Solar. Solar weapon boost ×4 on any solar weapons ever. So this is coded as a stasis grenade, basically, even though it does solar scorch damage as well. It'll only proc the stasis weapon boost ×4. So this is useful to know, right? Yeah, so like I said, Risk Runner to stay alive, Lost Signal to proc concussive reload for the weak in there. So it's just, you want to shoot Lost Signal as often as possible so that you're always getting the tick damage from Lost Signal. And then proccing bait and switch, just by using your 3 weapons. But yeah, Rhyme Stealer here actually works very well because you're always flashing enemies in and out of freezing, right? You're constantly shattering, slowing, freezing, shattering enemies. So if you end up cracking them with chill inhibitor as you're doing damage with it to, like, say the boss is sitting in your Duskfield grenade or has a hailfire spike attached to them, or your silence and squall, like your grenade is likely going to be shattering at times, so that's going to give you an immediate stack of frost armor, right? And I think when you enhance Rime Stealer, you get double these stacks of frost armor, right? So on top of like picking up orbs with powerful attraction, you know, from the clones on the ground as often as you can, because I'm using like heavy-handed here, so I can use my withering blades, or just if I kill too quickly with Risk Runner, right, I'll produce orbs, or I can just use my grenade launchers, right? So I'm producing orbs pretty regularly, even in the boss arena. So between my orbs and between Rime Stealer, I'm keeping good uptime on frost armor, right? So that definitely helps make up for the fact that I don't have woven mail here because I'm using Stargaters. Now, if you do the damage rotation right, even in a fire team, you're going to get 2 supers per damage phase, right? So the trick is to just make sure that you're constantly applying loss signal for the damage over time, because that tick damage, along with the tick damage from your super and your dusk fields and your hailfire spikes, and you know, just doing all that, you're automatically going to get your next super basically ready to go for like when you come out of the nuke room. Sometimes it'll even be ready before you go in the nuke room, and that's with tier 3 intellect. I do not recommend that you go below tier 3 intellect. Ideally, maybe go a little bit higher so that it's less forgiving, or more forgiving if you you know, if you say you die during damage phase and it takes your teammates a few seconds to get you back up on your feet. In that time, you've lost damage, you've lost building up your super. So it is possible to recover after a death and still get your second super off, but yeah, definitely having a higher intellect could supplement there as well. You don't even need to use stuff like hands-on, right? Like this is like the strat on Consecration Titan with Thunder Crash is to Thunder Crash, and then you just consecrate all the puppets, and then you're going to get your super. You can get almost 3 T crashes even in a fire team per damage phase, right? I know that's the solo 2-phase strat, but yeah, so that's basically it for the build there. As far as the aspects and fragments there, I pretty much went over everything. Obviously, key ingredients here are Ruin and Purpose, like I said, and obviously Faceted Protection, you always want to have that, and then Faceted Dawn. So you're going to stack 25% damage, right? Make sure you throw that Withering Blade out when you go to proc Bait and Switch, right? So proc your Foe Tracer, proc your Radiant, proc your Bait and Switch, and then you're basically, you know, your grenade launcher is doing like probably 70% more damage than normal, right? So just make sure you do all that and have all the right aspects and fragments here. And then Faceted Awakening is kind of just a neutral game bonus, right? So like when, you know, pre-damage phase, you can pick up some extra shards and get some extra ability regen. So that's kind of nice there. And then I like Winter Shroud just because it's just more slow debuffs, which means more stylish execution or procs. This is really good for pre-damage phase as well, just for setting stuff up. But yeah, that's basically it for the build. I also use Gambler's Dodge, right? So that way we just have more consistent procs for Radiant, because Radiant is such a short time window on Prismatic. You only get like 5 seconds of Radiant. You want to be throwing as many Withering Blades as possible. You mainly want to be proccing your Foe Tracer from your Dusk Fields, your Super, your Hellfire Spikes, your Transcendence, right? Don't be like, mainly you want to focus your Withering Blades on just for proc and Radiant. So mainly just throw them when you're ready to start dumping Bait and Switch grenades, right? But all your other abilities you just want to use all the time, rotate between your weapons. So that's basically it. Combat mods here, like there's no loadout swaps with this build, right? That's the beauty of Foe Tracer and Eternal Warrior for Titan, for example. And I think even Sanguine Alchemy for Warlocks, right? You can get your armor charge equivalent surge mods that you would normally get from investing all the energy on your legs, losing out on recuperation, losing out on scavenger mods. You can really use your combat mod setup to benefit your neutral game entirely because your exotic piece is giving you all of the surges that you need for damage, right? And even better, because it's giving you a ×4 damage buff instead of a ×3, which is the maximum. So you're getting like marginally 3% more damage, more than you can ever get from surge mods on your legs, right? So yeah, so I'm playing into the neutral game here with siphon mods for all of my weapons, loaders for all of my weapons, heavy-handed because it's just usually using my melee is kind of an immediate kill, and then usually it's a easy way to pick up an orb of power close by. Plus my dusk fields aren't really killing enemies reliably for firepower to give me orbs of power anyways, right? So I just want to make as many orbs. And keep in mind I'm using Star Eaters, right? So I always have to build up my ×6, and this can actually help you when you're going to cast your second super during damage phase. It's possible that you can go out there and pick up a couple orbs right before you throw that out there, and then you've got another Feast of Light magnified super, right? 2 of those in 1 damage phase is very good, right? You'll see the damage numbers in the clips coming up. Resist mods, I like going with Arc and Solar, especially if I'm using Risk Runner. I'll throw in a Solar. If I wasn't using Risk Runner, I'd probably go double Arc. And then Recuperation for additional healing when I pick up those orbs, get my Frost Armor, get a bit of healing back, get more Dusk Fields downrange with Innervation, right? Pick up some ammo. Really good if you can manage to pick up some bricks during damage phase too. I mean, that's like you're reliably going to run out of ammo on your grenade launcher, so this can help you as well during damage. And then Reaper and Powerful Attraction, make sure you're just always dodging, using your Gambler's Dodge, getting your Radiant going again with your more Withering Blades, picking up orbs of power, like I said, feeding into Star Eaters, feeding into survivability, feeding into ability regen, right? Feeding into Frost Armor, etc. So you definitely want to have Powerful Attraction on there. And then special finishers, mainly just for the neutral game pre-damage phase. But if you wanted to, you can also use like 1-2 finisher. You can use whatever you want here. It's just, yeah, it's up to you. It's just nice to be able to produce special ammo for your fire team members too, right? Especially if you're using like double special or rock, or this is more just something that I always have on. It's not something that's like build specific per se. And then as far as the artifact mods that I was using here, Killing Breeze, kind of nice for neutral game. Rapid Impacts, you obviously want to use an Overload Grenade Launcher. That's going to reduce enemy damage output by 25%, right? Have an Overload Grenade Launcher. I don't know if it applies it to the boss, but I think it applies it to the clones, so that's useful there. It's more damage resist, essentially. Reload your grenade launcher faster if you need to. My Lost Signal has auto-loading anyways. Crystalline Converter, I was just testing this out today. It's kind of useless. Like, it's more for stasis builds specifically, where you're producing a ton of shards from like Grim Harvest or Tectonic Harvest or whatever. You can't really do that on Prismatic to ever even make use of this, so you definitely don't need that. Hail the Storm, definitely do want to use that because it increases your shatter damage, especially if you use the tonic, right? And then Armor of Aramis can help you, you know, if you're really critical on health, you can get an automatic freeze off. Brain Freeze is going to make like an automatic dusk field around enemies when you freeze them. And then, you know, key component here is probably the most important 2 artifact mods, really all that you need here. Concussive Reload and Rapid Kinetic Impacts, right? Apply Weaken with Lost Signal. If I wasn't doing that, I would change the build completely and I'd probably use Snare Bomb, right? And you have to use Void Weapons instead for Foe Tracer. But yeah, Concussive Reload, Kinetic Impacts to get the Kinetic Tremors with your Grenade Launcher, really good. But yeah, that's about it. That's all I can think of. So yeah, let's go into the clips next. Alright, so as soon as I go up here, I've got my Feast of Light 6. I'm going to use Lost Signal, weaken the boss, throw my super out, and then I'm going to try and get to one spot where there's no lightning, so I'm looking first before I start to do damage. Use my abilities, proc bait and switch here, dump at least 1 mag, and by the time I have to reload, I'm probably going to have to move out of the way, right? So now's when I'm going to pop my Transcendence and make sure that I can consistently proc Foe Tracer. One of the things that you know, you really have time to take care of the puppets and mess around, reload your weapons. Like, even though this seems like such a stressful boss fight, it's really, it gives you enough time so that you don't have to be so stressed. Pay attention to your surroundings, look around all over the place. Like, we're so used to, in Destiny, doing boss damage where you're like tunnel visioned on the boss and the boss only because you're, you know, doing like a 10-second damage phase or something crazy like that, right? Like, this is like a 2-minute plus boss phase. You're gonna run out of ammo on all of your weapons, all of your damage weapons. So just take the time, reload, pay attention to your surroundings, and that's the longer you can stay alive and just throw abilities, strafe, jump, move back and forth. You know, like, I just got my second super here, so now I can go out, re-weaken the boss, reapply my super, right? And was that even... Yeah, it did have Feast of Light there. I only had one stack, but basically I was banking on, you know, not building into having Feast of Light for my second super. It's just a bonus if you can get some, right? So I did have a small bonus there. So again, now just paying attention to staying alive. Look at the boss just sitting in that dusk field, re-proccing stasis weapon boost ×4. Like, you'll notice it's just always up on the left side of my screen. The shortest buff that you have is Radiant, right? So that's the hardest to keep up. You almost always have to throw like an additional Withering Blade while you're doing a bait and switch dump, because you only have Radiant for half of the time that you have bait and switch, right? So now we're going into our second damage phase. Pay attention to my grenade launcher ammo here. I spent a couple minutes farming ammo before we went into damage phase here, and I said, good enough, I don't want to waste my teammates' time anymore, right? So I had 29 instead of like 32 ammo. I would have had 3 or 4 more grenades here, but I said this is good enough, right? And we were below half on the first phase, so if everything went well here, this would be, you know, this would be it. This would be the 2 phase, right? Yeah, so let's watch this. Stasis weapon boost, Radiant, bait and switch, Vorpal weapon on my lost signal. All good buffs up here. Faceted protection, keeping us alive.
Okay, I'm going after the bomb.
Just make sure you kill those clones, right? Like, they die pretty fast. You just gotta make sure that you kill them so you can get the nuke. So I don't have quite as much super energy as I had on the first damage phase. I think it's because I probably just didn't do as much weapon damage. But I'll get it back here pretty quick. Re-weaken. So I shoot my Withering Blade right before I pull out the grenade launcher, because you have such limited time on the Radiant. Right, get my second super off here. Watch, stasis weapon boost just went to 0, and then we went right back up to 10, right, because of the damage of over time from Silence and Squall. This is where Faux Tracer really shines. Like, most of the time, most builds, most people are just doing surgeless damage for the majority of the damage phase. But because we don't need to pick up Orbs of Power to get our surges, then, you know. Anyway, so you see how much health the boss has? That's because I had 3 less. I wasn't full on my heavy, right? If I would have had those that 1 extra heavy brick before going up, instead I said, oh, good enough, I think we'll be all right. Anyways, that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to ask me anything in the comments section. I'm happy to talk to you guys.